Hey everyone, excited to be here today. Welcome to this podcast on using win-loss analysis to increase your win rate and hit your quota with confidence. We appreciate partnering with Sales Assembly. I'm Spencer Dent. I'm one of the co-founders and co-CEOs of Clozd. As we go through this, we're going to cover a lot of information today. So if at any point you have questions or things that weren't as clear or things you'd like to follow up on, I'm always happy to be a resource for people that are interested in this stuff. My email address is spencer@clozd.com, CLOZD.com. So seriously, please feel free to reach out at any time if I can be helpful to you, but excited to jump into this. So 2023 has been a pretty tough year for a lot of companies. You know, the graphic you're seeing right now is showing how across a sample of enterprise account executives and strategic account executives, quota attainment has declined throughout the year as we've dipped into this broader macro recession. It's been really hard for companies. And one of the things that we've noticed is not just new business, but existing business has been pressure tested. Well, what happens oftentimes when companies, having worked a lot with sales leaders and worked a lot with revenue, go-to-market marketing leaders, there's always kind of a way that people approach, there's a default way that people approach hitting quota. And they think about it like this. I have a quota. I've got to hit a certain amount of pipeline, and then I will get a certain percentage of that pipeline to hit. And oftentimes, if you look at this graphic, they might come up just short. The immediate answer, or kind of the default, is, well, we just needed more pipeline. So let's ramp up more sales development reps. Let's spend more money on marketing. Let's go after our sales team and tell them they got to work harder and prospect harder. And you can do that, and that 25% win rate that you had before can turn into a 25% win rate with just more pipeline. But the cost to generate that extra pipeline can actually be significant. But the other way you could hit quota is actually just to be more efficient. And if you just increased your win rate by 3 percentage points, you could have hit your quota. That's super important because what happens is companies think about driving more pipeline versus how can they improve their win rate. So let's talk about how you can improve your win rate. First, I'm going to tell you a story. Years ago, I was working in management consulting, and one of my clients was a huge commercial construction company. And they were one of the biggest commercial construction companies in the world. And I was working with their sales and kind of go-to-market partnership team to help them figure out how they could win more deals and cross-sell and figure out how to be better overall and more effective. Well, during this time, one of the really important deals that they were pursuing was a deal with the Daytona 500 Speedway in Florida. So they had spent 2+ years building relationships, trying to sell this huge remodel of that awesome facility. And I can't even count the number of the amount of hours, time, effort that they'd put into this. They estimated that it was millions of dollars, and rightfully so, because it was a $500 million deal. So after years of chasing this deal, they were coming down to the end, and they were pretty confident that they were going to be awarded that deal. They knew that it was coming. They knew that there was a formal process. They knew that they would find out in the next couple of days, and the day came. And I remember being on the leadership level of that organization, sitting in a conference room, and all of a sudden the entire floor went quiet. And it was an eerie feeling. Well, they had lost the Daytona deal. How many of you have had an experience like this where you had a deal that you felt like you were going to win and you feel like you got blindsided? Well, that's what happened here. And there's a default approach that companies take when this happens. They do what everybody does. They did what everybody does, and they set up a post-mortem. And that's where they got everybody in a room, the 10 or so people who had been pretty involved in this, and they started to figure out why. And it was this strange kind of mourning process where people were sad, shocked, angry, frustrated. They felt like they'd been misled. And it was interesting because they felt like they knew why they won or why they were going to win the deal, and they had no idea why they lost the deal. Well, we asked if we could go, as the independent third party, we asked if we could go interview the buyers at the Daytona 500 and figure out why this happened. And what was interesting, here's the big takeaway. Our client had a really good understanding of how they were being graded, of what the buying committee was looking for. They understood the line items by which they were being graded. And they understood how they were being perceived, actually the grades. So they knew how they were being graded, and they understood where the concerns were and where the strengths were. What they didn't understand was the weighting, that some of those line items mattered a lot more to that buying committee than others. And that is why they lost the deal. The core thing that they cared about was not, do you have relationship with local contractors? Do you have relationships with local municipalities to get the permits and things like that? They didn't care about that as much as they cared about, where have you done this before? And show me where you've done it before. And the other players that were involved in this just had dominated on that front. And in fact, they were not even really ever really truly close to leading and being selected. So knowing that made it really easy for them to, on the next deals like this, the lesson was, we need to make sure that we have the right expertise that can showcase exactly where we've done this before so we can win these deals in the future. So think about that and how that might apply to your business, right? That's a good story of, you can't win more if you don't know why you are winning and losing in the first place. So there's no way to triage and get better if you're not willing to understand what happened and why. So let's talk a little bit about that point. One of our clients, Rex Galbraith, is a CRO of a company called Consensus, and they've been working with us for several years now, and this is his quote, and I think it is a perfect way to articulate the importance of win-loss analysis. Win rate is so important, but how do you impact the number? More phone calls, try harder, negotiate harder. The numbers are important, but what feeds the numbers is what win-loss analysis provides. So understanding why you win and lose is the key to driving your win rate. So how can you conduct win-loss analysis more effectively? Like, how do you do that? So I'm going to walk you through a few things. One, I'm going to share with you some best practices. I'm going to share with you some definite do's and some definite don'ts, and give you a few examples of the outcomes that companies will see. So first way to not do win-loss analysis is this. You're probably looking at this screen and seeing, oh wait, that's how we've done this in the past. We do a drop down in the CRM and have sales reps fill that out. That is a losing strategy. It is absolutely flawed from the get-go, because here's what's going to happen. Tell me if this has happened to you before. You have gone to do win-loss analysis, you put a drop down in your CRM, and the reps don't comply and don't fill it out. So that was a waste of time. Okay, let's say they did comply and they do fill it out, but they're not giving you enough information that's detailed enough to where you feel like you can do something on it. So then what you do is you make it more complex and more robust with all sorts of branching logic and things like that. But then it's super complex and hard because of the structure of Salesforce to aggregate that feedback back together and to see trends. In other words, this is a flawed strategy because it's just a horrible way to collect feedback from your sellers in the first place. I'm going to challenge the premise that you should even collect feedback from your sellers. B2B sales is like a poker game where you never actually have to show your cards, and your buyers never actually show the sellers exactly why they did what they did. And so what happens is your sellers find themselves guessing, and our data shows that. Looking across the thousands of deals that we have reviewed, we actually integrate with our client's CRM so we can actually see what the buyer said and compare that to what the rep said. This is a startling stat. 85% of the time we found that on lost deals, the rep is wrong. They're just wrong. They're putting in what they are guessing, but when we actually go talk to the buyer, we find out what the real reason is why they won or why they lost that deal, and it's wrong almost 9 out of 10 times. Moreover, 65% of the time, the rep has put in who they perceive they are competing against, and that is wrong. right? 65% of the time, the reps are saying, I'm competing against competitor X, and it's really competitor Y. They're wrong about who they're competing against. So think about, in your business right now, how many initiatives are being driven to compete better with competitor X on feature set A, B, or C. Like, I got to go beat these guys, and the reason we can't beat them is because our product doesn't have this feature. Well, there's a good chance that one or two of those items that are driving your conclusion, either the competitor or the reason why you're losing to them, is wrong if you're going just off of what reps are telling you. So be really careful. So first tip, don't trust your CRM data to tell you why you win and lose. It's inaccurate, it's incomplete. And even if the reps are doing their very best job and are full of integrity, they're still forced to guess a lot. Do rely on post-decision feedback from your buyers. Go to your buyers. Your buyers will tell you why they did what they did. Especially, a lot of times they feel an obligation to do that because you've spent the time, money, and effort pursuing their business. Second tip here, there's a tendency that companies have to cherry pick deals instead of trying to cover as much pipeline as possible. So yeah, I want to do win-loss, but it's really hard and complex to go after all my deals or to try to talk to everybody or try to get feedback from all of these different deals. It's manual. The reps don't put information in the system, yada, yada, yada. So I'm just going to grab a handful. Well, some is better than none. So if you have to, cherry pick, but be careful of doing that. You're better off trying to cover as much pipeline as possible. So it's useful to cover new deals, new business that you've won. It's incredibly useful to cover existing business, why people are upgrading, downgrading, churning, because that will give you a full picture of how you can drive your revenue. And what's interesting is you will get different insights as to why you win and lose new business versus why you retain and increase existing business or churn that business. You get different feedback, different types of feedback from customers who have experienced your solution and your service than the perception up front at the beginning. So very useful. You want to cover as much of your pipeline and all of the revenue decision points that you can. And this process can seem super complex, but it's actually really easy if you just simplify it. Opportunities get closed out in your system. You want to take that list of opportunities and you want to go solicit feedback. There's different ways to solicit feedback, and you should think about, based off of the nature of your transactions, how to engage these people. And then once you go collect that feedback, you want to be able to analyze it simply and share it out with people. So I'm going to tell you two really quick things to think about here. One, as you're going out and reaching out to people, the highest, most valuable type of feedback you can get is an interview with the actual buyer. That makes a ton of sense if you're selling bigger deals, if their deal cycles are multiple phone calls, call it $20,000 plus average contract value or average sales price. That makes a lot of sense to go talk to the person and see why they did what they did. As the deals get smaller, it could actually be a little bit overkill to do that, and you can use different means. On the one end, you could do a really basic win-loss survey. You could do an asynchronous video interview where you ask questions and they have the ability to respond that way. We have clients that run this spectrum. They have really big enterprise deals that are $1 million, and they have really small, more transactional deals. And the way that they will work with us is our technology will allow them to cover that spectrum. So they can do surveys and video interviews on the low end and do in-person or in-detailed person, face-to-face kind of interviews on the high end. The important thing to think about here is you need to customize it to your business. But make the process simple. As deals get closed out, we reach out to them, we collect that feedback. The second thing that is really important, once you've gone and collected that feedback through the different means, you got to get it to the people that matter. The mistake that a lot of companies make when they go do win-loss is they hoard that information and they turn it into like quarterly book reports where they go read out in a QBR, versus as soon as the feedback starts coming in, if it's product related, I should give it to my product team. If it's sales related, I should give it to my sales leadership. If it is pricing related, I should give it to the people who are in charge of pricing. The most important thing you can do is get that feedback, and get it to the people that can do something about it as quickly as possible. And that's how you'll drive efficiency in your business. And what that output will look like is it will look like this. First, you'll want to see the deal. Like, who was the logo that you tried to sell to and what was the outcome? Was it a loss? Like in this case, Global, it was a $122,000 loss. So starting with the basics. The second thing you'll want to know is you'll want to know some of the metadata on the deal. And this can all be from your CRM. Who was the rep? What region was it? What product were you trying to sell? What industry were you selling in? Etc. That is always really helpful to have context so that you can interpret the feedback correctly. Third thing you want to know is what drove the decision? What were the areas where they viewed you really positively on that grading kind of spectrum? And what were the areas where you maybe didn't do quite as well? So how did you do? What were the things that drove their decision? And then specifically double clicking into those, what exactly did the buyer say? So, what would that look like? It would look like this. And this is what our platform can do for clients, is you can see the specific deals, the metadata, the reasons why they did or didn't choose you with the actual quotes, the qualitative information that the buyers shared that say why they did what they did. That's super useful to you because then you can go all the way down to the finite details of what's driving their decisions. You can't make a lot of decisions or changes for your business based off the size of a bar chart, but you can, understanding the bar chart, which things are happening the most and what specifically is happening so you can go do something about it. Knowing that pricing is a reason why you lose is not helpful. But knowing that within pricing, it has to do with our pricing model and there's things about it that are confusing. And if we were to simplify that, we can make it easier for buyers. That's exactly how you want to do win-loss. And that's essentially what that translates to, is if you capture those reasons as to why you're winning and losing at each deal, then you can aggregate them up and see here's why we win and here's why we lose across deals. And then you can go triage into each of those and see specifically what the buyers are saying so you have the right level of context so you can go act on it and change. That way you'll be able to actually impact your win rate because you'll be doing it based off of the specific examples that the buyers are giving you. And we've been doing this for a long time. We have hundreds of customers. We've done tens of thousands of win-loss interviews, collected probably hundreds of thousands at this point of survey data points and things like that. And the interesting thing is to hear our buyers share about how they've been impacted and how their business has been impacted. Craig Clark, he's the CMO of Nitrogen. And one of the things that he shared about how win-loss has helped them is its win-loss analysis has been transformational. I think it's a true statement that we had many assumptions about why we win and why we lose, and that a good many of those assumptions have been definitively proven false. We have made packaging changes, pricing changes, go-to-market messaging changes, positioning changes, and churn reduction changes. Anecdotally, we're sporting a 50% win rate, up from the 30% range in the pre-Clozd era. So that's pretty awesome. You can see how win-loss can impact the whole business. Notice that it's not just like, hey, we changed a little bit about how we market. We changed things about how we can drive churn. We change things about pricing. Our clients change things about their sales process. Another example, this is really an interesting way to deploy win-loss, is on your churn customers and on your existing business. One of our clients really had a real big concern, especially in this environment, about pressure on their existing customer base. They said what we've seen is just quarter over quarter and a massive improvement in retention, greater than 10% gross revenue retention improvement. And I mean like an actual 10% jump, not like 10% over the previous gross revenue retention. That's awesome, right? Being able to actually see, oh, we're hearing this from customers, and if we can address these things, we will keep them happy and they will stay. There's other things that are really beneficial about win-loss too that when we started this business, I didn't really realize. One of the things is we find tons of deals where we go out and we talk to the buyer and we realize the deal is actually still in play. Like the person maybe ghosted the sales rep, because there were other things going on, or they said no at the time and now the deal's back on the table because something else happened. And we've had clients share that with us. For example, here, the CRO of Hello Heart said the sales rep heard a no, but the closed interview heard not now. So if that interview hadn't happened, we probably would have just put that deal on the side and not pursued it. Instead, we've got a late stage 500K opportunity in our hands. So there's a lot of things like that. We also find a lot of wins where the buyer chose you, but the first couple of weeks and first month or so has maybe not gone too well. So by the time we're talking to them, they're an at-risk customer, and we can help you identify those and go address them. Ultimately, it comes back to this, right? Win rate is so important, but how do you impact it? Going back to that quote from Rex, the way you will impact it is through win-loss analysis. So I'm going to wrap by telling you some best practices to make sure you do if you're going to go do this. The first thing is this. I'm going to tell you a story. When Pete Carroll took over as the head coach of the USC Trojans, he wanted to instill the right culture into the team. And one of the things he did is he named Monday Tell the Truth Monday. And what that was Monday was film day, where you would go in and you would watch the game film from the previous weekend and you would tell the truth. What went well, what didn't go well. It's really important that if you're going to do win-loss, that you're willing to seek out and try to understand the truth from the buyer's perspective. If you don't have a culture that can accept and is open to that and is actually seeking it, it's going to hurt your business and it's not going to go well. But if you do, you're going to improve. And, like the Trojans under Pete Carroll, they won couple national championships and a pretty successful team. If you're willing to seek out and understand and do something about the truth, then you'll be able to do better. A couple of other things to think about. This is a high-level initiative. You're going to get feedback about product, about sales. You're going to get things about pricing, about marketing. It needs to have executive-level sponsorship. The decisions that will come out of this at the highest level oftentimes are C-level decisions. That's why it's also important to be cross-functional, because what you need is the leadership across the organization to be open to this feedback and be willing to work on it together. To make it easy, you want to integrate with your CRM. You don't want to have to spend all this time chasing down names and chasing down deals and doing it in a very manual process, which goes to that next point. You want to make it as automated and continuous as possible. Don't do a start-stop program. If you do a start-stop program, you're going to get some feedback. You're going to think that you're ready to go act on it, and then it'll go away, and all of a sudden you'll find yourself surprised when new reasons are popping up anecdotally, and you'll realize that you would have known about them 6 months sooner had you been paying attention and doing this continuously. So you want it CRM integrated, as much of it automated, ongoing feedback as possible. You want to cover as much of your pipeline as possible. We talked about that a little bit earlier. You don't want to just cover little pockets. You want to try to understand get as much representation of your pipeline as possible, so that any decisions you make, you feel like are not based off of one deal or one anecdote. And the last one, you want to make it accessible and transparent. The more you get this information out into your organization and you show your company that you want to hear from buyers, understand their perspectives, and act on it, the more you will get leverage from your entire team. So the best thing you can do is get this feedback out into the hands of people in your organization that can do something about it. So I mentioned this at the beginning. I'm super happy to help out. If any of you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Spencer@Clozd.com. Also, if you're just looking for more resources, you want to learn more about win-loss, you want to learn more about how you can do this better, there's this QR code here you can scan. What that will give you access to is a white paper we have. It's a pretty robust white paper on everything from how to set up a program, best practices, how to think about sampling, how to think about interviews and how to run good win-loss interviews. There's an ROI calculator if you're trying to make an internal business case for this, how to think about what it could do for your win rate. You can actually see a video of what our platform looks like. That might give you, if you're doing this for the first time, seeing what good looks like, that's pretty helpful for companies. And then one of the things that we love to do for companies is a free win-loss interview. If it's helpful for you, if you actually want to see what the output of this looks like, we'll go out and do an interview or two for you for free so that you can actually see the impact of what talking to your buyers will do for you. So really appreciate you all taking the time. Thanks, Sales Assembly, for letting us be a part of this, and have a great rest of your day.